Alright, hello everyone. This month, as we are celebrating the return of spring and also fun days like St. Patrick's Day, I want to talk about basil for our herb of the month. You guys know basil. Basil has been everywhere. I mean, in every Italian dish you can think of, in a lot of different Asian cuisines too, like Thai basil, and all kinds of, Indian foods and other such things like that. Basil is absolutely a go-to staple in one's kitchen, and it has a lot of uses both, as a medicine, magically, and of course, culinarily. And before we get started in all of that, let's talk about the history of basil a little bit. There is quite a level of debate around where exactly it came from, but a lot of places do say that it originated in India, which, given how important it is, in Hinduism and in, Indian folklore, would make a lot of sense. However, in the past 5,000 years, it has been used pretty much all over the globe and done a lot of good stuff. And of course, as it spreads, it gains more folklore notoriety in all of these different countries. Now, on the basics of basil, it is actually a member of the mint family, so just like mint and including things like catnip, basil is a very fragrant herb, a very widely used one that is really good in all different kinds of cuisines, and also it's got a lot of different varieties. You can have so many different types of basil, and a lot of people, they grow it based on the taste. Of course, you got like lemon basil and Thai basil and sweet basil. They grow it for the shape, right? You've got spicy basils, like those globe basils. You got all these different types of, the big fat leaves or that little cute kind of shrub. And you can even grow it for the color because they have things like purple basil too, which is really, really interesting and is a little bit more like your traditional sweet basil. But as it's come along, all of those, spice roots throughout the ages, it's come to actually be known as something of, a burial herb. In places like Greece and even ancient Egypt, they have seen, evidence of corpses having basil, thinking that it would help them get to the afterlife, especially in Greece. And in Egypt, they have found it in tombs, suggesting it might have been something of an embalming herb. And of course, following in that folklore, right, we actually do have some notion from Greece that this is an herb that only pops up where bad things happen. If there's a lot of abuse, they say that's where basil grows. So for ancient Greece, it was actually very much associated with bad luck, evil, poverty, and it wasn't, the greatest of herbs to have around. Likewise, throughout the rest of Europe over time, it became associated with, Satan, with scorpions, because oftentimes scorpions would be found hiding in the shade of the plant. Some places had basil as a kind of not too good herb, and they thought because, it was an emblem of the devil, that it could ward evil off too, but that it was still like onions and like garlic, not the most friendly plant. However, if we take a look at where it really originated, right, when we look at India and other such places like that, basil is actually a very holy and spiritually important herb. There are a lot of different stories about how basil cropped up, especially in India. It could be either a manifestation of the goddess of wealth, Lakshmi, or it could even be, something that manifested from the tears of one of the gods, Davantari. There are a lot of different creation myths around basil, but nonetheless, basil itself has become something of a very sacred plant to the point that just having it in your house can scare away sinful attitudes and, evil spirits. It's almost something of like a household deity, in that like if you have a pot of it in your house or if you have it growing, in your yard, it is a very protective and exorcising plant. So they're great to have around. And in fact, when it comes to having it in your house, did you know that in Tudor England, in order to kind of bless someone's new house when they move into a new house, you could give your friends a pot of basil, and that would say, that would bring in a lot of wealth into the new home. It was considered a very lucky plant, and in many places it still is. It's that wealth attracting kind of, bad energy blocking plant. And because it is so heavily associated with, purity, spirituality, those strong spiritual emotions, in fact, in Jewish folklore, it's actually considered something that can give you strength during your fasts. So, something that gives you strength of spirit, something that attracts wealth and keeps bad misfortune away. These kind of outweigh the associations that ancient Greece had with just the opposite, actually. And there's even some really cool Christian lore in that, Helena, the mother of Emperor Constantine, was actually said to be looking for a piece of the cross that Christ died on. And in fact, near a temple of Aphrodite, it is said that she apparently found basil growing, and basil, later being referred to as like this kingly royal herb, suggested to her that Jesus, being the King of Kings, might have something to do with it. So she just kind of decided to start digging up this patch of basil she saw, and then she found a piece of wood that had basil growing out of it. And, she touched it to a few people, and these people were healed instantly of their diseases, suggesting that this was indeed a piece of the true cross, and that basil was the signifier of it. A pretty interesting piece of myth and folklore, but nonetheless one that suggests that basil is very much over time gaining that reputation as a very kingly, royal, and powerful herb, especially spiritually powerful. In fact, in Greek Orthodox tradition, the Feast of Epiphany would actually be a time where priests could sprinkle a house with holy water using basil branches to flick the water around. Basil could just chase evil right out. It's a very holy plant, and even still, this is a sign of, standard magical practice within a church structure. Using basil to flick holy water is like a 2-for-1 deal to scare away evil spirits and to extra bless a home. And even today, basil is still considered a very lucky plant. If you go to Italy, Portugal, you'll notice that it very much is associated with love and with care for any of your loved ones. So, for instance, in Portugal, on either St. Anthony's or St. John's Day, you might give a loved one a little pot of basil to have on their windowsill, and that's a very nice and loving gesture. And of course, medicinally, basil does have a lot of, pretty good uses. And once again, I will say, do not use herbal medicine as a replacement for professional doctor's advice. If your doctor is telling you to take a certain medication, do not throw it out the door for the sake of some plants you can get at the supermarket. Do not do that. However, if you have very, very minor issues that don't require a doctor's visit, like say if you just have a little sniffle, these, in my opinion, again, are where herbal remedies really take off. Because not a lot of people have the time or the money for co-pays to go run into the doctor every 30 seconds. In that case, you might want to use something like, a mouthwash or any other kind of easy, quick, effective remedies. Like, my favorite for when I'm cold is some ginger and some honey and a cup of tea. But with basil, it does have very much those properties that you would want if you are having some kind of issue with inflammation and some kind of issue with, like a wound or something, because it's very anti-inflammatory and also very microbial, antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal. So this can be used as a mouthwash. It can be used, to kind of clean out a wound if it's got a little scrape or something. You can use it for something like that if you have a tincture or an infusion made with it. And it's even considered a mild antidepressant and adaptogen. You might have heard the word adaptogen floating around these days when people are trying to push all their mushroom coffees and all these kinds of things. All that adaptogen really means is that it's supporting your adrenal system in handling stress, right? There are things that are stressing you out. These things can help your body regulate itself a little bit better so you're not just dripping in cortisol all the time. Basil can help a little bit with this, to the point that it is even mildly sedative. So Anna Franklin in A Hearth Witch's Kitchen Herbal actually recommends, having a cup of basil tea before bed as a way to drift off to sleep easier, chill out, calm down, or even to use it, a basil infusion in bath water for a similar effect. And something that's actually very interesting is that basil, depending on the variety, does kind of do what the name says it does. So for instance, lemon basil actually does have one volatile oil called limonene in it, which you can find in citrus peels. And this oil is actually, pretty good as an antimicrobial and also as an anti-inflammatory. You can also use it to make all kinds of cleaning products, both for your body and just for your house. You can use it as, part of a wash for the floors. You could use it as part of shampoo or, or soap. So it's something that definitely keeps things clean, and of course that citrus smell is also an insect repellent. A lot of natural insect repellents include something like a citronella, some kind of citrusy smell, because bugs just do not like it. And also, to the point of basil being something of an antidepressant and an adaptogen, the smell of citrus in general is actually something that, in studies on mice, have shown to reduce stress and anxiety. That citrusy kind of smell, it's good for you, and lemon basil does have it. Sweet basil, if you ever notice, has kind of a pretty sharp kick. It's actually because it has eugenol in it, which is a volatile oil that you can actually get out of cloves. And as you know from areas like where basil comes from, like India, cloves are often used, as a mouth freshener, and same in China, right, as a mouth freshener, and they're even used as a very mild local anesthetic. So like, people who have had toothaches have used clove oil on their teeth. So the fact that this is present in sweet basil, once again boosts that idea that it is, an antiseptic, it is, good for anti-inflammatory sources, and so these are the things that you really want to use it for. And of course, basil's also got all kinds of good vitamins and minerals in it. It's got about 10% of your daily value of vitamin K, which is something that helps your blood clot. So if you don't have enough vitamin K, and you get a little cut, your blood's going to have a hard time actually making a scab to close up that wound. This is why vitamins and minerals, they're very, very important. And this is also why adding these herbs and spices to your food is not only, a great way to make things taste better, obviously, but a great way to add those extra vitamins in that you wouldn't normally get. We all hear that leafy greens like spinach have a lot of iron and other minerals in them. Well, so do herbs like sweet basil, which is a nice big fat leaf. And now as we're talking about basil, right, and all of these different medicinal effects, these historical folklore effects, we obviously got to talk about the culinary effects, and those two volatile oils I mentioned, limonene and eugenol, these do get destroyed when you put fresh basil on heat. That's why you always see things like a margarita pizza, right, where you just have literally mozzarella and tomato sauce, you bake it, and then you put the basil on when it's out of the oven. You do that because if you put it in the oven and you bake it, it just destroys those oils, which not only destroys the health benefits, but destroys a lot of the flavor. You want fresh basil, not wilted, just ready to go right off the plant. That is really like the highest capacity you're going to get of those oils. To that effect, anything that you might cook with it, you want to put it at the very end. So things like pesto, you don't ever want to actually cook the pesto with all the other ingredients. You want to throw that in literally right at the end when it's off the heat and mix it together with the pasta water, with the Parmesan to make that sauce. You don't want to cook it on a really high heat because you're going to lose that flavor and you're going to lose a lot of those nutritional benefits. That's not to say that dried basil doesn't have a similar thing, right? Those vitamins and things are still in it. It just will have a different flavor. It's not going to be as bright and it's not going to be as punchy. That's kind of the draw of basil, is when you can like chop up some leaves, you can throw it in a salad, in a wrap. You can make caprese, right, which is just slices of tomato, mozzarella, and basil leaves. These are the things that make basil shine, because you are getting all of that flavor and the maximum possible quality of all the health benefits of it. But of course, other places with basil, especially the dried stuff, do include your average tomato sauces for spaghetti. Any kind of Mediterranean dish uses a lot of the sweet basil especially. A lot of certain Thai meals will have Thai basil included. And so it's really just a great way to get that extra punch of flavor, or to bring in that depth of the sauce, because it does have a very strong scent even when it's dry. My favorite ways to use it are definitely in spaghetti sauces, and also as a pesto. When you have a classic pine nut, Parmesan and basil pesto, it is delicious. But another thing I love to do, especially when I have my garden going and I have the fresh basil available, is to literally just, chop it up and throw it on, like, over easy eggs at the very end of their cooking. Once my eggs are basically ready to take off, just sprinkle some on top, and it just goes so well. Basil and eggs is an underrated combination. And it's also perfect for some really, quick and dirty magic. So as we talk about magic, I will say that my favorite use of basil is definitely in money workings. I do use the dried stuff especially for any kind of sachets or any kind of incenses where, like, I'm burning something like a sigil. I will surround it with a little bit of cinnamon and a little bit of basil, and that is really fantastic for anything where you're trying to attract luck, wealth, energy, abundance. It is great for it. And don't forget that, as it is Mars fire based, and it has those qualities of scaring away evil spirits, it's also fantastic for exorcism. So combine that with garlic and onions, and if you make a meal with it, that is a very protective meal. If you do something with a spell with it, similar idea, right? Garlic powder, onion powder, and dried basil. This can go into a sachet to keep evil away. This can go, into some kind of incense blend or any other kind of thing like that. It can just go into setting up a ritual space. It can do a lot to also keep bad stuff out, or if you want to bring good stuff in. Remember that onion and garlic have a lot to do with money too. But as we are coming into, this month of March with these themes of luck and, birth again with spring, in terms of growing abundance as everything is starting to, bloom and seeds are starting to sprout, basil is a wonderful go-to to start really setting up your money bowls or any other kind of item for the coming spring. Think about that, especially as we got full moons coming up, we got new moons coming up, we got all kinds of good stuff coming up. So if you need a little boost of luck, if you need a little protection on your side, basil is your herb this month. So I hope that is a helpful breakdown of this very common herb that maybe we might not think about that often, and I hope that you guys use it to great effect in your kitchen in the month to come. Stick around for more that we are talking about this month with kitchen magic, kitchen tips, and I will see you guys next week. See ya.